On the surface, I'm here because I wrote 2 books. The first book was called Much Abides, and Much Abides, the subtitle is The Survival Guide for Aging Lives. And the second book, that was published in 21. The second book is called Late Fragment, after a poem by Raymond Carver, and it was published in 2023. The books cover a different part of life. Much Abides had 2 basic themes. One was transitions, and how, as we transition in life, we're going to have to change, and that's a major theme for tonight, and we're going to hit that pretty hard. The second thing, and it also I spent a lot of time thinking about the transition from careers to retirement. In fact, I wrote the book about it, and then I really haven't been that good about it. I haven't been very good at it. And my wife, Mary, is here. I'm not supposed to mention that. She gets real nervous when I'm talking, okay? The second book, Late Fragment, was much harder to write. It was very emotional, and it's about the end of lives. Late Fragment is defined as a time in lives after retirement, after volunteering, after being able to play sports, after doing everything, and the next thing that's going to happen to you is your own death. And Mary said, when I told her I was writing that, she said, that's going to be a real thigh slapper. Okay, everybody's going to be really. I wrote it, about 2/3 of it, and I became so close to the people who were 85 to 95 because I was searching for what to hold on to during that time. And I wanted to know what their fears were. I wanted to know what their hopes were. And I got to know a lot of these people very well. And I had several people die, and I stopped writing. I didn't really know whether or not I could get it back. And I gave it to my son, Chuck, who teaches writing, and he's a history teacher out at Latin. I said, Chuck, just look at this, because I feel like that I'm too close to it. And he read, and he said, Dad, this is a lot of really good stuff, but it's not because you're too close. It's you're not close enough. You need to tell us what these people told you, and you need to share with us the pain that they went through and the pain that you went through being close to them. And so I got fired up again. And so that's why Late Fragment is such a tough read, is because I had to prepare you in Jeopardy section. And then at the end, I sort of bring you around to what you need to hold on to. Because of the subtitles, I have this one friend who gives me a hard time. And when I do these podcasts, he said, Chuck, you're perfect at this. You got a great face for radio, okay? And so he's the same guy that told me, he said, you got a lot of arrogance to call a book a survival guide for aging lives. He said, that's kind of arrogant. And so, and I know out here, a lot of people are thinking, what is this burned out chest surgeon? What's he going to say tonight that's going to be of any interest to me or have any value? Well, I'm going to double down. I'm going to go right at it. I'm going to double down on the arrogance, in that the things we're going to cover, some of them are going to be hard, some of them are going to be soft, but if you open your mind and your heart, they have the potential to change your life. Now, how is that possible? Let me explain, okay? The books are based on my 10-year career, my late career, caring for patients losing their memories and caring for those caring for them. This experience changed me as a person. It changed me as a physician and deeply as a person. It forced me to develop new perspectives. As a physician, it made me develop a new level of success with patients. And the last thing was a completely new value system as a person. The same approach from my career as a cardiovascular surgeon, if I had tried to bring that with me to the new clinic, it never would have worked. So I had to change. If I was going to be successful in this new phase, I had to come up with a new gig. In the career as a cardiovascular surgeon, my buddy Harold is here, we could fix things. Okay, people come to us with problems, sometimes big problems, sometimes life-threatening problems, but they were fixable. The families would come, bring their patient, the patient would undergo the operation, everybody would get together, rehab, and then the patients go back and start living their lives, and the families go back and live their lives. That's not what happens with dementia. We don't fix anything. The day that the diagnosis is made, all involved, family, patient, friends, everyone, their lives are changed irrevocably forever. The patient is looking at a certain decline. The families are going to have the burden of watching this, and also the responsibility of caring for the patient all the way to the end. And then when the children, when it's over, the children have the genetic burden that they're in their mind every day is that in my future? In my caring for these patients with memory loss, I couldn't impact the disease. I couldn't fix anything. I could help with the side effects. Any of y'all are with us at Memory and Movement Charlotte, you know that we had 4 goals for the patient: calm, safe, clean, and loved. But I couldn't affect the line. That's why I'm not doing heart surgery anymore. You can see it. The line or the slope of the decline of the patient. I had no more impact while I was taking care of those patients than Alzheimer's did. Alzheimer had in 1906 when he first looked at August Dieter's cells underneath the microscope and saw the plaques and tangles. I had just as much potential to help. Oddly, caring for these patients and their families have been the most rewarding part of my career. It wasn't that I didn't love surgery. I loved being in the operating room, and I especially loved watching these patients get better, and they would go on and they would have healthy times. I love seeing that. But this was different. At that, when doing surgery, there's a little distance. You know, you're maybe on a pedestal, or there's a little distance. With taking care of families and dementia, we were in it with them. There was no separation. There was no detachment. This was close up. I knew what they were going through. I got to listen to their stories. I got to hurt when they hurt. And then, for the most part, I was there at the end when they were dying. This proximity to the suffering and to the courage opened up an awareness, an appreciation of what the human spirit looks like at its best. And I actually devoted and dedicated the first book to my patients and their families. The books came from this period, this intense period, and from these bonds that I have with these patients. The books share 3 themes, okay? The first is the preciousness of time. There's a misconception when people feel like they've gotten to a certain age. They say, gosh, I'm 65. I'm old now, and I don't really have much going on. Well, everybody knows that as a group, as patients or as Americans, we're living longer. In 1900, the average lifespan of a male was 46 years. 2023, a female in the United States had a lifespan of almost 80 years. So we are living longer. We know that as a group. But how do I know how long I'm going to live as an individual? Well, just on longevity alone, if you make it to 65, The average age at death is 84. 65 gets you to 84. And 70 gets you one more year, average 85. Now, where you really start to lengthen out is that if you make it to 80, now I can see I got a few 80-year-old people, okay? If I make it to 80, the average age at death, average age is 89, okay? So here is an amazing thing, that if we retire at 65 and we have sort of a negative spin that my life is getting a little bit over, I have 25 years from the time that I retire to the average death. Average. So 25 years is a lifetime. You always hear the refrain, if I could just do this over again and know what I know now, I would do things very differently. Well, you do. Someone's going to give you 25 years. Now, we have a lot of challenges in those 25 years, but it's a lifetime. We get a redo. So I want one of the things for y'all to leave here with is, I got a little bit of tread left on my tire, okay? The second thing is the necessary steps and changes that we have to make in each new phase of our life. And in retirement, the phases come pretty fast. They come fast, okay? At first, you're all jacked up about making starting times and where am I going to be? I want to be at the beach. And then you're driving back and forth. And then all of a sudden, you get a little tuckered out. You're not doing that anymore, and you're dealing with a different phase in your life. Late Fragment, the book, covers that. If I try to take the trappings of success that I had in my career, and I try to take it into my retirement, it's not going to work, okay? I've got to have different goals. I've got to have a different definition of success, just like I had to do when I had to leave surgery and go into dementia care. And I also have to have this, when we're in the corridors of power and we're working, we have to have strong egos. We have to have a lot of macho stuff. Doesn't work when you retire. You can just ask Mary that, you know. Our egos have to come down. Our focus has to be on others, especially those that we're responsible for. Sometimes that's the hardest thing. Someone retires and they're struggling. We're going to talk about that. And they lose the ability to connect with those that are right in front of them, the most important people in the world, and they lose the sight of them. The third thing, and finally the crucial observation, that human interaction is the essential element in our lives. And it is the predominant source of authentic joy. This fact, what I just told you, increases exponentially as we age. Okay? There's a famous Viennese or Austrian philosopher. His name is Martin Buber. And he's written a book. He's written several books. They say he's a Christian theologian. He's actually Jewish. But he taught at Union Theological Seminary. But he wrote a book called I and Thou. And he wrote, when two people relate to each other authentically and humanly, God is the electricity that surges between them. So one of the most important messages tonight is that the most important thing we have in our life is each other. Coming here, it doesn't matter what I say, or whoever's sitting here or standing there, it doesn't matter. What matters is coming here and being with your friends and people knowing what's going on in their lives, they're knowing what's going on in your life, and it gives us the strength to sort of be able to handle what's coming. If we're alone, we can't handle very much. So God is between people, and I think that's a really important message. Every week, Melanie, hand me the book, would you, please? Every week at the Memory Center, I get a call. Someone says to me, Chuck, I got it. I got dementia. So I want to read you. I was hoping the guy that I wrote this about would be here, but he's not. But you know him. Every person, all the stories in the books are people that I know or I've had, they're true, every one of the stories. Now, a couple of them, I lost track with someone and I had to splice something else on the end. But these are all real stories, okay? So, RGB is a 70-year-old friend who frantically calls one afternoon. I am losing it and I need to see you right away. My father had Alzheimer's late in life and I knew this would happen. I got it. I asked, what has prompted all this? I was with you 3 weeks ago and there was no sign that anything was wrong. I don't think this panic has been around too long. He says, 3 things have occurred in the past 2 weeks that have convinced me that I'm definitely losing it. The first 2 happened on successive nights last week. I often wake up in the night and have trouble going back to sleep. I'll go down to the kitchen and eat a bowl of ice cream. I don't recommend that for insomnia, okay? I'm not saying, okay. On this particular night, I left the freezer door open. Sarah came down in the morning and was obviously upset that I had been so careless. The killer was, I did the exact same thing the next night. Now I'm beginning to doubt myself, and she is rolling her eyes and thinking, here we go. The third clue was the hardest. I have played golf with the same foursome Wednesday afternoon for more than 10 years. We were teeing off, and I realized that I could not recall the names of 2 guys in the foursome. This has happened to a lot of y'all, I know. These are my close friends, and their names had left me, gone. Get this, I had to sneak around their cart to look at the names on their golf bags. Are you kidding me? I definitely have been slowing down since retiring. I'm not as sharp with names. And forget about new technology. I lost the ability to turn on my TV with a new remote. I had to get my son to come over to turn the damn thing on. He put duct tape over one button that apparently can't be pushed or the TV can't be turned on. We got RGB in the clinic and took a careful history, examined him, and during neuropsychological testing. We sent off labs and did an MRI of his brain. Everything came back normal. We did follow up on his difficulty sleeping. We were able to apply the best medicine, reassurance, and he went back to living his life. So I'm going to talk to y'all a little bit about things that I don't worry about. Okay, I'm going to make y'all feel better at first. Okay. At first. Okay. All right, things I don't worry about. I don't care about names. All right? I'm going to say that again. I don't care about names. We have people come to the office all the time and say, I feel okay, but I can't remember anyone's name. And I say, okay, well, let me get to this. You were good at names one time in your life? No, I've never been good at names. Go figure that. I said, why would you think you'd get good at names at 75? Names are hard because think about this. You will be thinking about someone and you're trying to come up with their name. You can remember everything about them, okay? I'll say, that guy, what's his name? I remember he had this great looking sister, and you go through the whole litany, but the moniker, the attachment is an abstraction. It really doesn't mean anything. So we actually peak at about age 28 with fluid intelligence, and all the rest of that, trying to remember names, is gone. So I don't worry about names. I do want y'all to be a little bit more aware, though, is because if you're meeting someone, I don't know why we do this, but someone said, this is Joe Blow. And you are thinking about the impression I'm making on Joe Blow or something. Joe Blow's got something in his ear or his hair or something. And you said to someone, what's that guy's name? How can you not remember Joe Blow? Okay? So just be a little bit more vigilant. Listen and be more aware. We're going to talk about that. All right. The second thing I don't worry about is technology. Okay. All right. And especially at our age, okay, because our ability to absorb new technology peaks at 28 and it keeps going down throughout our lives. One thing I can't stand, though, about the technology is they tell you all the stuff that this thing can do, this gadget or this TV remote or anything. I don't really give a damn what it does. I want to dictate what it does for me, okay? So I want to turn it on and I want to turn it off, okay? That's all I care about, all right? Actually, it's changed aging, all right? I had a grandfather, okay? He was an Irishman. His name was Charlie Ahern, and he was a phenomenon. He probably finished the 8th grade. If he walked in here, he would have had on a Panama hat, seersucker suits, the two-tone shoes, and he knew what he was about, okay? So my brother and I got a chance to be with him all the time, and he would take us to Civil War battlefields, Revolutionary War battlefields. He was a character. He'd take us to the Red Sox. We saw Ted Williams play, took us to see the Yankees, and just being around him was it was reverential. Now, my brother and I started to realize later in life that he didn't really have any idea what went on in those battlefields, but he was telling you a story, okay? He got into trouble one day when he was telling us about the Rebs and the Union soldiers, and it was a Revolutionary War battlefield. So we got a little bit. All right. But the thing was that we were in awe of him. Everything he told us was like biblical. It was true. My grandchildren, I'm the guy that's not quite as smart as they are with the technology. I'll have an iPad in my hand, and my little granddaughter Sophie will whip that out of my hand, and she'll do something and she'll give it back to me, and the look on her face is, "Oh man, you got to gear it up here, buddy. You're not getting it done." All right. So it has changed aging. I don't care about, and make sure that you ask. Don't just go through if someone comes and says, "This is the greatest gadget in the world. It'll do anything." And you say, "This is what I want it to do. You show me." Then go write it down, okay? Because you're going to forget it. All right. All right. Going into a room and you forget why you were there to go back, okay? How often does this happen? All right. This is easy. You're focused and you're putting up a picture upstairs. And you say, "Oh, I need to get a nail." So you walk downstairs, and for some reason, the fact that you're putting up a picture upstairs, you may need to worry about this one, okay? But what you do when you are in the room, you say, "I forgot, let me go up and remind myself." So go back up the stairs, you'll see it, and then bring the hammer down or some clue in case you do it again. But going into the room and not remembering, it's not a big deal, all right? Talk a little bit about the delay. You're telling a story, all right? You're telling a story. And someone's name or a place or a movie is some sort of noun or event or whatever. And you're talking, and there's maybe 5 or 6 people, and then all of a sudden it's gone. The name that you want. And you can be cool about it. You can try to go around it, but most people just go, "Oh my God, I'm having a senior moment. Forgive me." All right? It usually will come back, either 2 or 3 minutes or 2 or 3 weeks, but long gone, okay? Don't worry about that. Those are just senior moments. Don't worry about the delays. I want to talk a little bit about big goofs. This is where you really think you have it. One, she's not here, so I won't get into trouble. But this friend of mine has she hits something and dents her fender, and so she wants to go to the body shop to get the fender fixed. Well, she takes her husband's car that doesn't have the dent in it, and she gets there. Okay. Now, here's one on me. Is how many people have grown up in Charlotte, a lot of Charlotteans, you know on Park Road where the giant genie used to be, right there before the creek, all right? Briar Creek, right there. All right, there's a coffee shop in the back there. It's called Mugs. And I saw patients in their homes or at their facility on Thursdays. And so this is Thursday morning, and I always go in, and he's my buddy now, He wants to know whether he's got dementia. Okay, that's welcome to my world. And so I come out with my coffee, and in that same little shopping center there's a woman who is a caregiver and has a little kiosk there. And her husband, both of them are dead now, used to sit on a bench and he would watch the world go by. So I come out and he jumps up and he goes, "I know you." He said, "High school. We went to high school together." And I go, "Mr. Jones, I'm your memory doctor." And he goes, "You're doing a terrible job." Okay. All right. So I get in the car and I start driving away, and all of a sudden he comes screaming at me. He says, "Stop!" And I'm a little, a little impatient. And I roll the window down, and he reaches up and grabs my coffee, and he hands it to me. Okay? And he says, "You don't know how good this makes me feel." Okay? All right, so those are things not to worry about. Big goofs. Lisa Genova, who wrote Still Alice, came and she gave a really good talk over at Queens. And she said on big goofs, and I stole this for her, she said, "Hold it lightly. If there's something bad," usually the old GPs would say that if the patient comes in and says, "I've got a problem with my memory," they don't have a problem with the memory. It's the ones that come in and don't know they have a problem with the memory that you need to worry about. Okay. Now to get a little serious, how to protect your brain as you age. Okay. The first thing I'm going to talk about is depression. Depression changes as we age. And there are lots of reasons for it. But if someone is young, they're 22, 18 years old, even 25 years old, and you see them and they're depressed, you can tell. I mean, their physiognomy, their body habitus, it's just like, what's wrong with that guy? He's depressed. That's not what happens with adults, especially as we get into the late 60s, early 70s, and especially up into the 80s. Now, you're going to see a lot of wives hit their husbands on this, but one of the things could be irritability. All of a sudden, because you have this anxiety about memory loss, or you're depressed, that you begin to become irritable, that things bother you, something that never used to bother you. Another symptom is anhedonia, something that you love to do, and the pleasure from it is gone. Anhedonia, apathy. I don't want to do anything anymore. So the symptoms are very subtle for adult depression. So I want you all to be aware, because it can be in you, and all of a sudden someone that was really positive, upbeat, the next thing you know, they're always negative, or they're want to be by themselves, or whatever. Just be aware of that. The second thing is hypertension, okay? Now, as a cardiovascular surgeon, when I got into this, I started to have a bias that almost every patient that I saw had cardiovascular risk factors: hypertension, elevated cholesterol, prediabetes or diabetes. It just was very consistent. But hypertension drives memory loss. It also drives congestive heart failure, strokes, and heart attacks. So there is a late life phenomenon that we get into our late 50s, 60s, and 70s, and our vessels become a little bit sclerotic, not as compliant as they've been. And all of a sudden you've said, "I've had my blood pressure 120 over 80 all my life," and then all of a sudden it's 160 over 95. There's no such thing as the white coat syndrome. White coat syndrome means when you are having your blood pressure checked by a nurse or a doctor, that it shoots it up. And so you might say, they'll say, "Your blood pressure's up a little bit, 160 over 90. And you go, "Oh, I must be a little nervous." No, okay? And if you're 80 years old, I'll accept 140 maybe 145. But if you're at 155 or 160 and the nurse says, "Oh, you're just a little nervous," you go, "No, I want to see the doctor," okay? The medications that we are put on are very well tolerated, and it can save you from having a stroke. So be very aggressive about blood pressure. Elevated cholesterol. Early on in lives, taking a statin and lowering your cholesterol is very effective at preventing heart attacks, strokes, congestive heart failure. As we get older, there's no data on this, but the statins are the best anti-inflammatory medications on the planet. And so we'd love to have people continue. Don't think, oh, I don't need this because I'm 82. You need it because you don't want to have a stroke. Third thing, this is really important, okay? The number one marker for memory loss in a lifetime is hearing loss. I'm going to say that again. The number one marker for the development of memory issues in a lifetime is hearing loss. Oftentimes, it's not that you don't hear, it's the acuity of it, that you'll say, I'm sorry, I heard you, but I didn't make out the last couple of words. So don't be afraid. The hearing aids, if you're a veteran, you get them for free, okay? So that's a good deal. But if you feel like that people are always, if you're always asking, or someone that you love is saying, you're not hearing very well, don't get mad. Just say, okay, let's go and get tested, okay? It's very important because you can see when we correct the hearing loss, the slope of the line for dementia goes back to normal, or can, all right? Sleep. I like my patients to get 9 hours of sleep, all right? I like you to go to bed at 9. Nothing these days after 9 o'clock is any good, all right? That might have been a thing at one time, but not anymore. 9 o'clock. There's no reason to be sitting there with that blue light behind your computer and finding out on one of the cable channels or whatever of something that's just happened. It doesn't matter, all right? I like people to read at night. I like even to take a short walk at night, but and look at sleep hygiene, because not sleeping, there's this magical thing that occurs where if we go into those deep levels of sleep, the neurons shrink, and there are these things called microglia, and they are Pac-Man, and they eat all the bad stuff that's going on in your brain every night. So we want that effect. And there's a guy named Brian Johnson, who is the person that is trying to live forever. Y'all have been reading about him. He's got a team of about 15 people, and he takes all these blood things. He's taken thousands of supplements and all. And he wants to live forever. But someone asked him, he said, what do you think the most important thing that you've learned over these last 5 years being totally dedicated to living forever? He said the one thing is sleep, getting into those deep levels of sleep, okay? There's something that will prevent you from getting those that's common in our lives, and that's alcohol. Now, I'm not talking about a half a glass or a glass of wine at 5 o'clock. I am talking about 3, 4, 5 glasses of wine, or a couple of stiff cocktails and then wine with dinner. We want to have 2 or 3 nights a week where we don't drink at all. Just have the discipline not to drink. That gives you at least 3 nights. And then, and I'm not a prude. I went to the University of Virginia in the 1960s. I know all about booze, okay? But it's very destructive the older we get. About 70% of the falls that we have are related to alcohol. You go out to dinner, you have too much to drink, and then someone falls. Okay. I want to talk about destructive medications. I'm going to start with, I'm appalled sometimes at the trust that people have in the medical system and what they will put in their bodies for whatever reason. All right, so I have this lady, and I wanted her to take a drug. She couldn't sleep, and she was bone thin. So there's a perfect drug for her. It's called mirtazapine. women don't like taking it because it makes you have a very strong appetite, but it's really good for sleep. And so I wanted her to go on it. And so she said, I'm not going, Dr. Edwards, I'm not going on any of your crazy medication. I said, okay, but I think it's a good idea. She said, no, I'm not doing it. All right. So then she comes back in and she's on 5 supplements, 2 which are very detrimental to her. And I said, where's this from? And she said, well, there was a lady at the beauty parlor and I was sitting next to her and I decided that it worked for her. I said, well, how's she doing? Well, she's in the hospital now, but we have this sort of trust. These supplements that are on TV, Prevagen, all right? Prevagen. If you notice what the woman says is, I think with people with age-related cognitive decline would benefit from this. Age-related cognitive decline is normal. You don't need anything for it. This is fraud. So do not be taking a whole lot of supplements. Don't put things in your body because it will activate autoimmune disease. That's why Parkinson's, that's why dementia, that's why rheumatoid arthritis, that's why lupus, all our body's attacking itself, and we do it by having certain medications. Let me give you an example. Sometimes we need them, but there's a drug called Cipro or Levaquin. Okay, they're the quinolones. In about 2 or 3% of patients, you can take a Cipro, which is a marvelous antibiotic, and your Achilles tendon will rupture. It's that thick and that long, okay? And it just ruptures. You tell me these aren't powerful medications, all right? I do not like the benzodiazepams. Oftentimes we go to a physician and we say, I'm real anxious. And they write you for Xanax, Ativan, Valium, and Librium. Those are very addictive. Now, the joke at Hopkins was, don't ever start them, but you can't stop them, okay? It takes me 1.5 years to get someone off of Klonopin, 1.5 years. So I don't want you to go to your doctors and say, Dr. Edwards told me to stop this and I've gone into, the heebie-jeebies. But just be careful. I have 2 supplements that I love. One is vitamin D. It's actually a hormone. And the other is vitamin B12, because as we age, we don't absorb, so we put it under the tongue. But all the other stuff is, you've got some guy on there, he's got tattoos on his forehead, and he's yelling and screaming, and he's all toned up. And you're going to listen to him, and he says, I've got this green stuff every morning that I want you to drink. You don't have any idea what's in it, okay? He doesn't look all that bright to me, all right? But, so just be careful, all right? Dental hygiene. Sometimes we get to a certain age, and we say, oh, I don't need to go to the dentist anymore. Dementia is higher in people with periodontal disease, as it shows you inflammation. So continue to go to the dentist. Exercise. A great study just came out. 5 times a week, a 45-minute walk, not really care how fast you do it, 45-minute walk showed that you were protected from dementia. Now, I'm not buying that completely because there are no people with dementia that are going on a 45-minute walk 5 days a week. They're going to say, the hell with that, I'm not doing it, okay? But exercise, but the point is, what exercise you can do is beneficial, okay? Not that you have to run a marathon or do a triathlon. It's just a matter of 45 minutes of taking a walk. All right. I want to talk a little bit about anxiety. For some reason, we have become an anxious world. Okay? There are many reasons for it, but anxiety, a great deal of it is we're born with it. We're born with it because it gave us a survival advantage. If we were anxious, there's no way we're going out of that cave and go out and get eaten by some mammoth. Or if we're a little bit of a scaredy cat, we're not going through a raging river or try to hunt some lion over the place. So anxiety caused you to live longer because you weren't going out there and you were in the cave with some other scaredy cats. So that's where it happened. Everybody else is doing something else, and you're with your anxious partner. So then we have had in our society ambient anxiety is what I call it, meaning that we have ratcheted up the words we use, the pressures that we're on. We're under global warming, and we've got 2 weeks to survive, okay? Bill Gates, the smartest guy in the world, says we've got about 6 months. And then he came back and says, about 2 weeks ago, he goes, check that, I was wrong. I don't feel like we got global. Now, we do have some temperature issues, and I don't have an opinion. I just don't want everybody to scared to death over everything. That's how they sell you things. That's how on TV you're watching a ad for insurance, and this poor woman loses her husband. I mean, everything is to ratchet up our anxiety. All right, in the human brain, anxiety is manifested by obsessions. In the human brain, anxiety is manifested by obsessions. Notice our teenagers, okay? They are an anxious bunch. I don't know why, but they are. What do? They spend all their time on their phone. Now, there's a terrible eddy that occurs there because obsessive compulsive disorder means that the obsession is calmed down by the compulsion, which is a physical act that we do over and over. Well, when you've got that phone, it not only they go on the phone, and then it increases their anxiety because they see that they've been left out or whatever, or they're not as cool as someone else. And the next thing you know, we got this eddy going. Now, we think that the obsessions that for us at our age, we can say that, well, these kids, but we're just as addicted to our phones as our children are. You know that. You're on them, and you want to know what's going on, and then you're going to buy something. Mary doesn't do that at all. She doesn't buy stuff on her phone. She has an Amazon driver that works for her. He's, hey, Mary, how you doing? I've got breakfast ready for y'all. Okay, he's right there. Okay. So the phone, cable news, I don't care whether it's on the left or the right. Anytime you're listening to something that's trying to make you hate someone that disagrees with you, you're on the wrong track. It's poison. So just be aware of these obsessions. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. Okay, good. All right, I want to talk just a little bit about, I'm writing a book right now. It's about 2/3 way. It's called Coming Closer, and it's strategies for early memory loss. It covers 3 things. One, it covers normal cognitive aging, mild cognitive impairment, which is in the middle, and then early dementia. There is a social stigma that is so profound that people would almost rather have a very mild memory loss, or they'd rather have a stroke than mild memory loss because the stigma is so dramatic. I won't live. I'll kill myself if I have any type of memory loss. But this is early memory loss. And so we've got to address the stigma that, because every person that has even a little bit of normal memory loss thinks they're going down the tube. They think they're going to be alone, abandoned, and in a place they can't get out of. So what the book is trying to do is to address the fact that I'm going to have some slips. I might even have MCI, but everything in their lives is still intact. The ability to give and receive love, their children, their grandchildren. So I don't want people to think just because they got a little bit of memory loss that that's the end of the world, okay? And that's what the book is about. All right. I interviewed these 70 people, and I got very close to them, and I was looking for clues of people who somehow had gotten some of this stuff right. And they had some things to tell me. The people that I really wanted to know, they didn't tell me quite as readily as I would like, and I had to fish for it. But I've come up with 5 things that I think are what I learned from these people. And I call this hitting your stride before it's over, okay? The first is you got to smile. We are programmed to read the signals that people give us, because if we didn't, we would get into sinister situations and get attacked. So as soon as we see someone, we are trying to size them up, okay? And if that person smiles, they're giving us a signal. They're saying, hey, the world hasn't gotten the best of me yet. The smile tells you that you still got you got one leg up on the world still. And the last thing is that you can actually feel it. When you smile, you can feel the neurotransmitters going into your brain that are positive, okay? You can be having a bad day, something funny happens, you start laughing, and all of a sudden that negativity is broken. So number one thing is smile. The second thing, don't give up, okay? There has never been a person with your genetics and your life experiences that has ever lived or will ever live. You are unique. You're a unique story. And we've got plenty of people that are trying to tell us what to think. But I need you to have confidence in yourself, to value what you think, value what you can do. And when you do that, you start to connect, all right? We'll talk, but we need to hear your voice. And now it seems like that for whatever reason, people want to shut you up, especially if you disagree with them, okay? So don't allow that to happen. You are a story that's going to be told one time, and you may have the exact observation that can help a family or whatever. Don't be diminished. 3, we have to stay open. We don't have all the answers, so we need to embrace new ideas, new thoughts. Don't dismiss something just because that's not the way we've always done it. We don't need that. We already know how to do the stuff we're doing. But sometimes we're going to find out that, hey, this is great. Or you see your grandson, and there's a chapter in the late fragment where my grandson gets on me. I'm not very attentive. I always like to talk to people, and I talk to waitresses or waiters, and I kind of ask them, well, tell me where you're from, and also I say, what are your plans if they're young? And he says, Grandpa, you know how people just seem to brighten up when you ask them what their plans are, and we can hardly shut them up. And I, but that gives some kind of credence to I see you, and and he said that waitress we had at that barbecue restaurant, she had that huge tattoo, and you didn't treat her like you usually do. And he said, you know how Nana always gets mad at you when you're talking to waitresses? I said, I know. He said, I always like it. I said, you never back me up with Nana. He said, chalk that up to being smart, okay? So the story goes that he was right. And he said, he was teaching me about why people have tattoos. And he said, sometimes they're just to commemorate, someone that you loved or something that's happened. And there's a story about the tattoo. But the whole point is that if I had dismissed him and said, I don't want to hear about anybody with a bunch of tattoos and stuff, I would have lost the connection to him. And now he's challenged me, and I had to say, Chuck, you're right, and I'm sorry. Because he told me at the end, he says, there was a story there, Grandpa. You love stories, and we missed that story. All right, accepting loss. This is one of the hardest ones. But we have to accept the loss of our appearance. We have to accept the loss of our skills. And we have to accept the loss sometimes of loved ones. And this is a hard business, okay? Because if you live long enough, you're going to have significant loss. But how we deal with it, how we metabolize it, how we organize it in our sort of psyche, how we respond to it is going to determine whether or not we remain connected and joyful and have the potential for joy. If we say, oh, this person's gone, therefore my life is over, then we've lost two people. So the Stoics have a great that we can mourn, but we're going to turn toward the living. When we overdo a grief reaction, we're telling everybody else in our life that you're not valuable enough to sustain me because I lost this person. What does that do to these relationships? Because that's where love is going to come from. So it's important that we're going to have loss, and how we deal with it determines our potential for joy. The last thing is that in every person that I thought got it, always had a response. I would say, what do you hold on to? I said, here you are, you've got this going on. And they go, I just feel so much gratitude for this life that I've had. And I said, well, what's the gratitude about? Is it for the money you made? Or he said, I don't care. When you get into the late fragment, no one cares what you did, how much money you made, what club you belong to. They could give a damn. They care about one thing is, are you willing to listen to my story, and I'm willing to listen to yours? And the two of us are going to have that God right between us, and we're going to feel that electricity. That's what people hold on to. Thank you.
We have got a little bit of time for some questions of Dr. Edwards. Now, there are 200 people in this room, and there's no way that I'm going to be able to get to you with a microphone. So if you have a question, please speak very loudly. Yeah.
Chuck, can we get all of that in an easy-to-use podcast?
Yes, I know. Actually, the podcasts have been interesting. Melanie, she's my producer. She's awesome. It's On Your Mind with Chuck Edwards. It's on Spotify. You can go on our website or the podcast app. I didn't really know. What we were trying to do is to attack the stigma of aging. And I've got a series of people that I do that are super agers. I wrote a chapter in the first book, Much Abides, about super agers. Everybody wants to be a super ager, okay? And so I've interviewed a bunch of super agers, lots of people with caregiver issues, sometimes strategies, a lot about mourning the loss of someone. I take someone that has early caregiver, medium caregiver, and then interview them after the patient is gone. And so there's this wealth of, and all I do is ask a few questions. There's one on there that Melanie pulled a switch on me, and that I was supposed to interview someone, and then my son shows up to interview me. And it's called Chuck on Chuck. And he gets, I had to tell him about halfway through it, I said, I want to remind you there is a will, and you can be eliminated. Okay. All right. What is the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's? Dementia is an overriding umbrella. It's a series or a litany of symptoms, but it's not a diagnosis. And there are 5 major diagnoses under that. The most common, although I don't agree with this right now, is Alzheimer's disease, and it's the most common after the age of 70. The second is vascular dementia, and I feel like that it's underrepresented. That's why it's so important to control hypertension, because it's the one thing that we can really impact. The third thing is dementia with Lewy body, which is associated with Parkinson's disease. The fourth thing is frontal temporal dementia, which is the frontal lobe, and we have behavioral issues. That's really tough stuff. And the last one is CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, from the repeated concussions. I had 6 NFL players, 1 Hall of Famer, 25 Division I college players, and I started to see high schoolers that had repeated concussions during. So dementia, overriding symptoms, and then each one of those are a little bit different in their spin.
Back in the back.
Joe, can you talk about the value of journaling? The journaling. I like the idea that we have a time. It doesn't necessarily have to write it down, but writing it down makes it that we take ourselves seriously. What am I about? What is the potential I have to make things better? And how am I going to go about it? Okay, what am I supposed to do today? And I love the idea of sometimes we get distracted. We start, as we age, we become a little bit more self-absorbed. And again, that outreach to other people is what gives us this feeling of affirmation. And so I like journaling because it makes us take ourselves seriously every now and then.
A few years ago, I heard there was a medicine that slowed down the decline of Alzheimer's, but I haven't heard much lately about a medicine.
There are 3 drugs that are that have been approved by the FDA to actually impact the slope of the line. One was aducanumab, came out of Biogen in Boston, and it cost $70,000. It should never have been approved. And when it didn't work, they dropped the price to $30,000, okay? So that's been scrubbed. There are two medications now, lecanemab and donanemab. One's a Lilly drug and the other's a Biogen. The safety profiles are not good enough for people who already have dementia or who are in the moderate to severe. Not worth it. A lot of people are going into these trials, and I think the problem is the Japanese just published this huge study where they looked at lecanemab, which is a monoclonal antibody. It's a bunch of Pac-Men that go up and eat amyloid. They showed that the amyloid, the lecanemab is really good to get rid of amyloid, but the patients didn't get better. Their cognition didn't improve. There's some exciting stuff in the pipeline called Brain Shuttle. Roche has it, and it's called trontinemab. I'm glad I remember these, Harold. I don't know, we have to have a little trontinemab. Where the hell did that come from? Trontinemab, that they have taken and spliced the drug onto ferritin, and ferritin crosses the blood-brain barrier very readily. So you're able to get more medication across into the brain with less side effects. Now, but we're going to know if we can get rid of all the amyloid, we're going to know whether amyloid is the culprit, okay? I have this bias, but it's kind of like, as I told you, I went to the University of Virginia. Dick Payne will understand this. It's a big weekend at UVA, okay? Let's say it's Easter's, and you're walking along the fraternity houses. And there's one fraternity house that you're looking at, and the doors have been pulled off, the windows are gone, and it looks like maybe there was a forest fire somewhere along there. And in the front yard, there are about 100 beer cans. And you would look and you'd say, look what those beer cans did to that fraternity house, okay? That's what I think amyloid is. I think it's there, and it represents something, but I'm not so sure it's causing it.
Quickly, you didn't give us after 95, what's the average age to live?
If you live, if you get to 90, well, you're closer to 100. If you get to 100, it's 102, okay? But 94 right now. Sam's 94. I got you all over 99. 99. And if any trouble, give me a call. All right, thank you. Oh, one other question.
Okay, I'm going to stay down here. Thank you very much.
I enjoyed being here. Thank you.